news up, you guys. Yes, so it is like legit raining outside, so I don't need the noise machine. I'll probably turn it on if the rain stops. I have the window open. Whenever it rains, I put the window open just to get some fresh air in. It's kind of cold. Oh, ew! Sorry. My windowsill is like dusty because I haven't slept in my room for like the past like 4 months or whatever, or 2 months, whatever. So yeah. Oh my god, actually, it's cold. It's actually so cold. I'll keep it open a crack, like just the smallest crack. I hung up this painting that I did freshman year of college because I think it looks cool. Anyway, let's read Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment, Chapter 3. And I actually read this in the morning, but then I was so stuffed up and clogged up because of allergies that I was in pain and like blowing my nose every 2 seconds, and I don't think it was a very good reading experience. So yeah. So anyway, the next morning after a troubled sleep, a sleep that had not refreshed him, he woke up late. He woke up tense, bilious, and irritable, and looked with hatred at his tiny room. It was a minute cubicle, 6 steps long. Peeling off the wall in strips, the dusty yellow wallpaper gave the room a most sorry appearance. The ceiling was so low that a man of any height could not stand there without the sense that he was about to bump his head. The furniture matched the room. There were 3 old chairs. In the corner was a painted table, not quite level, and on it lay several books and notebooks which, covered with dust, apparently had not been touched for quite some time. Finally, a large, clumsy couch occupied almost the entire wall and half of the width of the whole room. Once upholstered in chintz, it was now badly tattered. This couch served Raskolnikov as a bed. Often he dropped off to sleep on it as he was, without undressing, without a sheet, covering himself with the dilapidated old student's overcoat. He rested his head on a small pillow under which he stuffed all the linen he had, clean or dirty, to prop it up a little higher. In front of the couch stood a small table. To let himself go more than he had, to sink lower, would have been difficult. Yet Raskolnikov, in the mood he was in, actually found this state of things agreeable. He had withdrawn from everything, like a turtle into a shell. Even the face of the maid whose job it was to look after him, and who occasionally threw a glance into the room, roused his bile and filled him with disgust. With certain monomaniacs who have been concentrating on something for too long, that is the way it goes. Since 2 weeks ago, his landlady had stopped sending him up food. But he went without his dinner and never thought of having the issue out with her. Natasha, the lady's cook and only servant, seemed willing enough to humor this inclination of his. She had entirely abandoned sweeping and tidying up his room. It was only once a week that she would mosey up behind a broom, accidentally as it were. She woke him up now. "Get up! Now is no time to sleep," she shouted, bending over him. "It's 10 o'clock. I brought you some tea. Want some tea? Wouldn't surprise me if you were near starved." He opened his eyes, shuddered, and recognized Natasha. "The landlady sent up this tea, or what?" he asked. He propped himself up on the couch slowly, with a pained look. "What do you mean, the landlady?" She put her own cracked kettle down in front of him, poured out some weak tea, and deposited 2 yellowish lumps of sugar. Here, take this, please, Natasha," he said, rummaging around in his pockets. He had fallen asleep fully dressed, and fishing out a few mixed copper coins. "Go buy me a roll, and maybe a little sausage, the cheapest kind." "I'll get you a roll this minute, but instead of the sausage, wouldn't you rather have some cabbage soup? It's good. It's yesterday's. I saved some for you yesterday, but you didn't get it until late. It's good cabbage soup." When the cabbage soup came and he began on it, Natasha sat down behind him on the couch and began to chat. She was one of those country women who love to jabber away. "Pavgushka Paranovia wants to complain to the police about you," she said. He frowned. "To the police? Why?" "You won't pay up, and you won't move out. What she wants is clear." "To hell with her," he muttered, grinding his teeth. "That's all I needed. No, I can't have that now. She's a fool," he added loudly. "I'll go talk to her today." "She's a fool, I'm a fool, and what are you? You're smart, all right, lying around like a lump, no good to anybody. Before you used to go out and teach kids, you said, but why don't you do a damn thing now?" "I do," Raskolnikov said sternly and reluctantly. "What do you do?" "Work." "What kind of work?" "I think. Average Redditor." he answered seriously after a short silence. Natasha rocked with laughter. She was prone to laughter, and when it seized her, she laughed inaudibly, heaving and shaking her whole body until she felt positively ill. "Do you make a lot of money, Chinking?" she finally managed to ask. "I can't go out to teach if I don't have a decent pair of shoes, and I'm fed up. I spit on them all." "Don't spit in your own well." "You don't make anything teaching kids. What can you do with small change?" he went on distastefully, as though he were answering his own thoughts. "You want to make a fortune all at once?" He looked at her strangely. "Yes," he added firmly after a pause. "A fortune all at once." "Well, for goodness sake, take it easy. You scare me. Shall I go get a roll or not?" "As you like." "Oh, I forgot. There was a letter for you yesterday while you were out." "A letter for me? From whom?" "I don't know from whom. I paid the mailman 3 kopecks, my own money. You going to pay me back?" "Bring it here, for God's sake, bring it here!" Raskolnikov, quite beside himself, cried out. "Oh, Lord!" The letter appeared, and it was from his mother, from Rizian province, Ryazan. "Girl, I don't speak Russian!" Sorry. He turned pale as he picked it up. He had received no letters for a long time, but now it was not that. It was something quite different that gave his heart a twinge. "Go, Natasha, for God's sake. Here are 3 kopecks, but for God's sake, go quickly." The letter trembled in his hands. He did not want to open it in her presence. He wanted with this letter to be alone. When Natasha left, he quickly lifted it up to his lips and kissed it. For a long time he stared at the address on the envelope, at his mother's dear, familiar, delicate, slanted handwriting. She had taught him how to read and write once upon a time. He delayed. He seemed to be afraid of something. Finally, he opened it. The letter was a long one. The small, delicate handwriting densely covered 2 large pages of stationery. Should I do a voice for the mom? I don't know, because it's kind of like it's a long thing. I don't remember if I did a voice in the morning. I'll do a regular voice. "My dear Raja, it is a little over 2 months now since I've chatted with you by mail, and this has caused me some distress, and I've even lain awake nights thinking about it. But you won't blame me for my involuntary silence. You know how much I love you. You are all we have left, Dunya and I. You are our everything, all our wishes, and all our hope." Okay, that was clickbait. Not clickbait. I'm reading this in a normal voice. For real this time. How it stunned me when I learned you left the university some months back because you had no means to support yourself, that the lessons you were giving and the other things you were doing had ceased. With only my 120 rubles a year pension, how could I help you? The 15 rubles I sent you 4 months ago I borrowed, as you know yourself, on the credit of this pension from our local merchant, Afanasy Ivanovich Varushin. He's a good man and was a friend of your father's. Having turned over to him the right to receive my pension until the debt was paid, I had to wait. It has only just been paid, and in all this time there was nothing I could send you. Thank God, I now seem to be able to send you something. As a matter of fact, it seems we can thank our lucky stars all the way around, and I now hasten to tell you all about it. First of all, I wonder if you know, Raja, dear, that your sister has been living with me this past month and a half, and in the future we will no longer be separated from each other. Thank the Lord. Her sufferings are over, but I will tell you everything in order, everything we have kept from you, and how it all was. About 2 months ago, when you wrote me, you would have heard from someone that Dunya had a good deal to put up with in the Svidrigailov household, and you asked me for a precise explanation. What could I then write you in reply? If I had written you the whole truth, you would certainly have abandoned everything and come to us, on foot if need be, for I know your character and feelings, and you would not let your sister be insulted. I was desperate myself, but what could I do? At that time, even I did not know the whole truth. The main trouble, that was when Dunya went to work as governess in their house a year ago. They paid her 100 rubles in advance on her salary, a certain amount to be taken out every month. It was impossible for her to quit her job before she had paid back her debt. In taking this money, her main motive, now I can tell you all about it, Raja, my precious, was to send you 60 rubles, of which you were in such need, and which you received from us the past year. At that time, we deceived you. We wrote you that it came out of the money Dunya saved up before, but that was not true. Now I will tell you the whole truth, because everything has suddenly changed by God's will for the better. And now you may know how great it is Dunya's love for you, and how precious. Actually, Mr. Sergeylov treated her extremely rudely. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm like gonna die. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. Oh my god. You know, after this, I'm gonna watch Netflix. Sorry, unrelated, but I want to watch Netflix. I'm watching this new anime called Cannon Busters. It's pretty good. Oh. And at a table, perpetrated a number of jokes and discourtesies at her expense. But I do not want to go into all of these unfortunate details. I do not wish to disturb you in vain, especially since it is all over now. In short, in spite of the fine and decent way that Martha Petrovna, I've been saying Petronova this whole time. That's Petrovna. That Martha Petrovna, Mrs. Svidrigailov, and all the domestics treated her. It was very difficult for our Dunya, especially when Mr. Svidrigailov, relapsing into his old regimental habit, found himself under the influence of Bacchus. The motive for his deplorable behavior was made clear only later. Can you imagine this madman some time ago actually conceived a passion for Dunya, but he concealed it and pretended to be rude to her and to himself. Well on in years, the father of a family, he felt ashamed of himself and horrified to be caught in such foolish desires. Perhaps that is why he had it in for Dunya, in spite of himself. Or it may be that, by his rudenesses and jokes, he hoped to hide the truth from others. In the end, he no longer restrained himself, and went so far as to proposition Dunya directly, openly, shamelessly, promising her all sorts of things, offering moreover to give everything up and run away with her to another village, or even, if you please, abroad. You can imagine yourself what she suffered. She could not at the time leave her job, not only because of the money she owed, but also to spare Martha Petrovna, whose suspicions would suddenly have been aroused to prevent discord within the family. It would have also made a great scandal for our Dunya, inevitably so. For a number of different reasons, Dunya could not count on escaping from that terrible household in less than 6 weeks. Of course, you know Dunya. You know how clever she is, what a strong-minded character she has. Our Dunya can bear a lot. Even in the most extreme circumstances, she has reserves of magnanimity. She is strong-minded. About all of this she did not even write me, in order not to upset. And mind you, we corresponded frequently. The resolution came as a surprise. Martha Petrovna accidentally overheard her husband while he was imploring Dunya in the garden. Misinterpreting, she blamed Dunya for everything, thinking somehow that Dunya was responsible. A terrible scene in the garden followed. Martha Petrovna even struck Dunya. She would listen to nothing, shouted steadily for a whole hour, and at last gave orders that Dunya be driven off to my place in town immediately in a peasant cart, into which all her things were thrown. Linen, dressers, everything as it came, unpacked and helter-skelter. Then it began to rain hard, and Dunya, insulted and humiliated, had to ride with a peasant 12 miles in an open cart. Think, then, how could I answer that letters of yours I received 2 months ago? What could I have written? I myself was desperate. I did not dare to write you the truth. You would have been extremely unhappy. You would have been outraged and angry. And what, after all, could you have done? You could have only ruined yourself. Dunya forbade it, simply to fill a letter with little things of one kind or another, when inside I felt so badly I was not up to it. For a whole month, nasty rumors about this episode circulated in the town, and things went so far that Dunya and I could no longer go to church because of all the suspicious glances and the whispering, and there was even conversations aloud in our presence. Our acquaintances began to avoid us. No one even said hello to us, and I learned that some store clerks and office boys were preparing to insult us in a low way, to smear the gates of our house with tar. And our landlord began asking us to move out of our apartment. Martha Petrovna was the reason behind it all. She had accused and blackened Dunya in all homes. She knew everyone we knew. That month she drove into town frequently, and since she was a bit of a gossip and enjoyed telling her family affairs, and especially loved complaining about her husband to each and all, she managed in a short time to spread the whole story, and not only in the town, but throughout the whole district. I took sick. Dunya proved stronger-minded than I. If you'd only seen how she survived it all and comforted me and gave me courage. She's an angel. By God's mercy, however, our torments came to an end. Mr. Svidrigailov took hold of himself and repented. Probably he pitied Dunya, and he presented Martha Petrovna with full and obvious proof of our Dunya's innocence, specifically a letter Dunya had written and handed to him sometime before the incident in the garden. The letter requested an end to the secret meetings and personal explanations on which he had been insisting Mr. Svidrigailov kept it after Dunya left. She reproached him in this letter most vigorously, thoroughly indignant at his treatment of Martha Petrovna, reminding him that he was a father and a family man, and finally how vile it was on his part to torment and make miserable a defenseless girl who had already suffered misfortune enough. Literally, that one guy from the Try Guys. Ned moment. Ned, whatever his last name is. Sorry. My allergies are so bad. In short, Raja, my dear, this letter was written in such a touching and noble manner that I wept when I read it, and I have not been able to read it without weeping since. I should add that the servants came to Dunya's defense as witnesses. As always happens in such cases, they had seen and they knew much more than Mr. Svidrigailov imagined. Martha Petrovna was quite taken aback, and she told us herself, struck dead and new. She was in any case fully convinced of our Dunya's innocence, and on the very next day, Sunday, went straight to church, prayed on her knees with tears in her eyes to our sovereign mistress to give her the strength to bear this new trial, to do her duty. Straight from the cathedral she came to us. She told us everything, wept bitterly and fully repentant, embraced Dunya and implored her to forgive her. That very morning, without any delay, she went straight from our place to every home in town, everywhere in phrases that were most flattering to Dunya, tears flowing all the while. She vindicated Dunya's innocence and the propriety of Dunya's feelings and behavior. What is more, she showed everybody Dunya's original letter to Mr. Svidrigailov and read it aloud, and even, as she had me previously, let them copy it, which would seem to me to be going a bit too far. She spent several days in this way, trying to reach everyone in town, for some people had been offended that others had been shown preference. Thus, a kind of pecking order was established, and each household knew ahead of time that on such a day Martha Petrovna would be in such a place to read the letter. And at every reading, many people gathered who had already heard the letter several times in their own homes and in their friends' as well. In my opinion, a good deal of this, quite a good deal, was unnecessary, but that is Martha Petrovna's character. At least she vindicated Dunya's honor completely. The whole infamy and shame of the affair lay indelibly on her husband, and I even began to feel sorry for him. That was being altogether too stern with such a madman. Dunya was requested to give lessons in several homes, but she refused. In general, everyone started to treat her with special deference, and all of this helped bring out an unexpected event, through which one might say our entire lot has been altered. You must know, Raja, my dear, that Dunya has been offered a proposal of marriage, and she has already deigned to consent, and I hasten to inform you of this quickly as possible. Although it was done without your advice, I trust you will not hold that against either your sister or myself. You will see for yourself that putting things off until you replied was impossible, and you would not have been able to judge properly without being there yourself. This is the way it came about. He is already a court counselor, this Peter Petrovich Luzin, and he is a distant relative of Martha Petrovna. Indeed, she helped a good deal in arranging everything. He began by conveying to her a desire to make our acquaintance. He was properly invited, we had coffee, and on the very next day he sent a letter in which he quite courteously explained his proposal and requested a quick and definite answer. He is a man of affairs and busy. At present, he is off to St. Petersburg, and he values every moment. Of course, we were a bit taken back at first, because it all happened so quickly and unexpectedly. That whole day we thought the thing over together. He's a promising and prosperous man, has 2 official jobs, and already has money of his own. True, he is 45, but rather good-looking, and still attractive to women. He is in general quite a solid and reliable man, a bit morose perhaps and haughty, but this may be merely a first impression. And let me warn you, Raja dear, when you first see him in Petersburg, which you will very soon now, don't judge him too quickly or impulsively in the way that you have, if your first impression of him strikes you not quite right. I say this just in case, though actually I am convinced he will impress you pleasantly. And anyway, in order to really get to know any man, one must do it gradually and cautiously, so as to not fall into prejudice or to make a mistake which would be rather difficult to correct or smooth over later. Peter Petrovitch, according to many indications at least, is an extremely worthy man. At the time of his very first visit, he declared to us that he was a practical man, but that he shared in many things the convictions of our younger generation, as he put it, and that he was against all forms of prejudice. He was a good deal beside, he said a good deal beside, for he is just a little bit vain and enjoys having people listen to him, but this is a small vice. Of course, I did not understand much of it, but Dunya made it clear to me that, though he is a man of little education, he is nevertheless intelligent, and it would seem kind. You know your sister's character, Rodya. She is a strong-minded girl, clever, patient, and magnanimous. Though she has a fervent heart, a trait I have come to know well in her. Of course, love is not especially involved, either on her side or on his, but Dunya is, in addition to being a clever girl, a noble creature, like an angel, and would make her husband's happiness her duty. I am sure he would concern himself for his part over her happiness too, at least. 2. At least we have no good reason to doubt that he would, though it must be admitted that arrangements were made rather quickly. Moreover, he is a very shrewd man, and he will naturally see for himself that his own marital happiness will be the greater the happier Dunya is with him. And if there is a certain unevenness to his character, if there are certain odd habits, and some disagreement as to ideas, impossible to avoid even in the happiest of marriages, Dunya has told me that she counts on herself in these matters, and that there is little cause for anxiety, and that she could bear a great deal as long as their basic relationship remained honest and true. At first he seemed to me a bit abrupt, but this may actually be due to the fact that he's a straightforward kind of person, and just can't help it. During his second visit, for example, after he had received our consent, he said in the course of our conversation that even before he had met Dunya, he had intended marrying an honorable girl who had no dowry and who knew what it was like to be poor. For, as he explained, a husband should not be obliged for his wife to his wife for anything, since it is much better the other way around, if the wife considers the husband her benefactor. I must in all fairness add that he put somewhat more softly and delicately than I have, since I have forgotten what he actually said and remember only the idea. Moreover, all this was said without a forethought, but obviously spontaneously in the heat of conversation, and later he even tried to qualify and soften it a bit. Nevertheless, I thought it was a bit abrupt, and I told Dunya as much, but she replied indignantly, said, "Word and deed are two different things," and that is of course true. Before she arrived at her decision, Dunya spent a sleepless night. Assuming that I was already asleep, she got up from her bed and paced up and down her room all night long. Finally, she went down on her knees before the icon and prayed long and fervently, and in the morning she let me know that she had decided. I have already mentioned that Peter Petrovitch is on his way to Petersburg. He has important business there and wants to open a lawyer's office in Petersburg. He has been practicing law for some time, and only the other day he won a very important case. He has to be in Petersburg because he has an extremely important case coming up before the Senate. He may, incidentally, be quite useful to you in this way, Rodya, my dear. In fact, all kinds of ways. Dunya and I have supposed that you might definitely begin on your future career from this very day, and regard your lot as clearly settled. Oh, if this could only be! It would be such a benefit as would have to be considered a blessing on us straight from the Almighty. Dunya dreams only of this. We have already ventured to say a few words to Peter Petrovitch on this subject. He replied cautiously to the effect that since he could not get along without a secretary, naturally it was better to pay a salary to a relative than to a stranger, provided he showed an aptitude for the job, as though there were any doubt you would show an aptitude for it. Yet he expressed some doubt as to whether your university studies would leave you time for work in his office. We ended on that for the time being, but Dunya has since thought of nothing else. For the last few days, she has been in a kind of fever and has composed an entire project pointing out how you could become Peter Petrovitch's assistant, and eventually, perhaps even his partner, especially since you are studying law yourself. I agree with her completely, Rodya, and I share all her plans and hopes, and I think they are quite realistic. Dunya is firmly convinced, in spite of Peter Petrovitch's present quite understandable evasiveness, after all he does not know you yet, that she will be able to arrange everything, through her good influence on her future husband, and she is convinced of it. Of course, we have been careful about mentioning our more remote plans to Peter Petrovitch, especially your becoming his partner. He's a practical man, and might take this rather coolly, since all this might seem to him more dreaming. Nor have Dunya and I mentioned our strong hope that he will help us pay for your university education. We did not mention it, first of all, because later on it will no doubt come of itself. Peter Petrovitch will do it on his own, without any waste of words, as though he could refuse our Dunya. This particularly since you might become his right hand in the office, and so you'd be receiving this assistance not as charity, but as salary earned. That is the way Dunya would like to manage it, and I agree with her completely. Secondly, we did not mention it because I particularly wanted you to feel on an equal footing when you met him, as you will shortly. When Dunya proudly told him about you, he replied that one had to observe a man for oneself as closely as possible before one could judge him, and that he proposes to get to know you and form his own opinion about you. Do you know, my priceless Raja, I have been thinking about it, and it seems to me it has nothing to do with Peter Petrovitch. It is just one of my own personal old ladyish whims. Perhaps it would be better if, after their marriage, I lived alone as I live now, and not with them. I am quite convinced that he will be well-bred and tactful enough to ask me himself to live with them, so that I should not be separated from my daughter any longer, and that, if he had not yet mentioned it, of course, that is because it is self-understood. Nevertheless, I will refuse. I have more than once noticed in the course of my life that mothers-in-law do not much endear themselves to husbands, and not only do I not want to be the least burden to anyone, but I wish to be fully free myself, as long as I have a crust to eat and children such as you and Dunya. If possible, I will settle down near both of you, and Raja, I have saved the most pleasant news of all for the end of my letter. My dear, you should know that we shall be together again very soon now, and the three of us can embrace after a separation of almost 3 years. It has been settled for certain that Dunya and I are setting out for St. Petersburg. I do not know exactly when, but in any case very soon, perhaps within a week. It all depends on what arrangements Peter Petrovitch makes. As soon as he has a chance to look around in Petersburg, he is going to let us know immediately. He would like, for some reason, to speed up the ceremonial as much as he can, and even, if possible, have the wedding before Shrovetide. But if not, there isn't much time after all, then immediately after Assumption. Oh, how good it will be to put my arms around you! Dunya is overjoyed at the prospect of seeing you again, and she has even told me, as a joke of course, that she would marry Peter Petrovitch for this alone. She is an angel. She is not going to write you anything now, but she asked me to tell you that she has so much to say to you, so much that she does not dare pick her pen, for in a few lines one can say nothing, and one only gets oneself all worked up. She asked me to send you her love and innumerable kisses. Innumerable kisses. Although we will be seeing you very soon in person, I'm going to send you some money in a day or so anyway, as much as I can. Since everybody has learned that Dunya is about to marry Peter Petrovitch, my credit has suddenly zoomed, and I am sure that Afanasy Ivanovitch will trust me on the pledge of my pension for as much as 75 rubles if need be. So I will send you perhaps 25 or even 30 rubles. I would send more if I were not worried about our expenses for the journey. Although Peter Petrovitch has been kind enough to assume part of our expenses, he has undertaken to have our luggage and large trunk conveyed at his expense. He is going to arrange this through people he knows. We still have to reckon on our arrival in Petersburg, where we cannot do without money. At least not for the first few days. Dunya and I have figured it all out together in detail, and as we figured it, our expenses for the road should not be much. It is about 60 miles from where we are to the railroad, and we have already made a bargain with a peasant cab driver we know. Dunya and I can travel quite comfortably third class, so I think I will be able to send you 30, not just 25 rubles, but enough. I fill 2 large pages on both sides, and there is no more room to squeeze anything in. It is our whole story. My, how one thing is piled on top of another. For now, Raja, my precious, I embrace you until we meet soon, and I send you a mother's blessing. Love your sister Dunya, Radia. Love your sister Dunya, Radia. Love her as if she loves you, and know that she loves you infinitely more than she loves herself. She is an angel, but you, Raja, you are all we have, our desire and all our hope. If only you are happy, we will be happy. Do say your prayers, Raja, do you say your prayers, Raja, as you used to do? And do you believe in the goodness of our Creator and Redeemer? I fear in my heart that you may have been visited by the latest fashionable unbelief. If so, I pray for you. Remember, my dear, how when you were still a child, when your father was still alive, and you used to babble your prayers on my knee, and how happy we were all then. Goodbye, or better, till soon. I embrace you tightly, tightly, and I kiss you, kisses without number. Yours till the grave, Pulcheria Raskolnikov. From the beginning, and for most of the time that he was reading the letter, Raskolnikov's face was damp with tears, but when he finished it was pale, distorted with a twitch. A heavy, bilious, angry smile played around his lips. He lay back his head on his meager and bedraggled pillow, and he thought for a long time. His heart beat powerfully, and powerfully his thoughts tumbled upon each other. At last he felt it grow close and stuffy in that little yellow room, so much like a chest or a cupboard. Both his gaze and his thought craved space. He grabbed his hat and left. This time, he did not even worry about meeting anyone on the stairs. He'd forgotten about it. He started out in the direction of Vasilevsky Island by the way of Vozhnevsky Prospect, as though he were in a hurry and had some purpose in mind, but he walked as he usually did, without looking where he was going, whispering to himself and even addressing himself aloud occasionally, which very much surprised the passer-by, many of whom took him for a drunk. So that was chapter 3. I might film chapter 4 tonight too, but maybe a little bit later, since I want to call my boyfriend and watch Netflix. Yeah, chapter 4 isn't too long.